And Brian Wyvill.
Hi, thanks very much, Ray, and thanks for organizing this session. As Alexei mentioned, many of you around this table, virtual table, I know either directly through Kunii or certainly indirectly through Kunii and certainly through CGI and the many other conferences that have spun off from his work. I first met him actually through my brother, Jeff Wyvill. In 1985, Jeff had a sabbatical, half in the University of Calgary, where I was at the time before I moved to Victoria, and half in Japan, in Tokyo. And indeed, we did some work together, my brother and I, and we presented it at CG Tokyo in '86, where I met Kunii, and he invited me onto the board of the Visual Computer, which had only recently started. And as a young assistant professor, I felt a little bit intimidated, and I think all of us probably go through a bit of imposter syndrome when you first become a professor, because you're still finding your feet, trying to find a research area to actually prove that you could make a contribution. And he was an amazing mentor for me in this particular situation. After the work I did with my brother on an implicit surface renderer, polygonizer, in '86, was led to a whole bunch of research in that area. And I remember showing Professor Kunii at one of the conferences and a review I got back from SIGGRAPH, which basically said that the research in implicit modeling was really not worthwhile because there hadn't been any papers on this in SIGGRAPH and nobody was particularly interested. And which is rather devastating for a young assistant professor to get, as it was something I was fairly passionate about at the time. And Kunii sort of said, well, the first point is that if you only researched what others had done, then A, it wouldn't be very original, and saying that you have to do that is obviously a self-fulfilling prophecy. Nobody's going to be interested unless somebody actually does try and publish something in this area. And I really took this to heart, and I certainly found that those encouraging words helped me throughout my career. And I realized I didn't have to do things that everybody else had done after all, which certainly is hard. It's hard to break out of that as a young professor. Of course, he also showed us, as Alexei pointed out, he also showed us how to organize conferences, many of us around this table. And I've organized conferences with several of you here, so it's quite interesting to see. And with Mary-Paul Kunii and I started the conference series on implicit modeling in '95, I think, which is now, of course, part of SMI, another one of Kunii's conferences. So in enormous numbers of ways, he's touched the professional careers of so many of us around here. Not the least being that I actually retired in 2018, but my journey to become full professor was certainly enormously helped by Professor Kunii's letters. He is a master at writing letters which enable one to get through tenure committees, especially in North America. They can be very fierce. And certainly my journey to full professor was enormously helped by A, by his encouragement in research, and B, by the letters that he wrote. So I think it's great that we're having this tribute to him. He's certainly had an incredible influence on a lot of young professors' careers. And it's absolutely great also that Mrs. Kunii was able to join us here. I'm really glad to see that. So thank you, everybody. Over to you, Ray.
Thanks very much, Brian. Thank you, everyone, for keeping to time. So there is sufficient time for me to add a few points of my own, if I may, with your permission. I first met Professor Kunii when he accepted an invitation to give a lecture at a summer institute in computer graphics, which was at the University of Stirling in Scotland. This was in the summer of 1986. And I've still got the title of his lecture, which was A Model-Driven Approach to CAD and Graphic Communication Networks. As someone has already said, a number of you have said already, it's a topic which you would see today in a state-of-the-art conference. We found on a visit to a local tavern in Stirling that Professor Kunii was an expert on Scottish whiskies, these being, I understand, very popular in Japan, and we did not know this at the time. As Brian has just said, he was a very helpful and supportive person in my own career, and on numerous occasions gave me helpful advice on suitable strategies to follow. He got on very well with the president of the University of Bradford, the late Professor David Johns, who had spent 8 years as president of the City University of Hong Kong before coming to Bradford. As such, he had extensive experience of universities in Asia and had an international vision. And he and Professor Kunii were able to discuss a number of matters of common interest. Professor Johns was an aeronautical engineer, so of course had an engineering background. I think it's interesting that that's kind of synergy that Professor Kunii had with David Johns, this idea of vision and international vision is something that I think has been very helpful to a lot of us in our careers. And finally, I was amazed how freely Professor Kunii gave his time and energy. Looking at the position of Tokyo on the world map made me realize how far he had to travel to give lectures and help others. This was generally at least an 8-hour flight and often 12 hours or more to get to Europe or the USA. And those of us who live in Europe can easily take this for granted when we can get to another country in 1 to 2 hours. So thank you, Professor Kunii, for all you did for all of us in inspiring us, in leading us, and in guiding us, and helping us to achieve more than we otherwise would have done. I'd now like to invite Dr. Hideko Kunii to say something if she wishes.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm really touched and moved. Until several hours, I didn't know this event, so I'm not well prepared. But I really appreciate to have this workshop in memory of Toshi Kunii. Thank you very much. Toshi stayed at a hospital in about 20 months, but he always interested in many things, and to the last words to me, in the hospital, he buy me the 5th generation cell phone. Until the end of his life, he was very interested in the technologies and the science. And I was really amazed at his vitality. He couldn't speak very much. His voice was very small, but he was, wanting some new things every day, and to watching some movies or some programs. So, I couldn't believe he is passing away, but he was very, he passed away very peacefully. So I was happy about that. And many people mentioned he was really had a pioneer spirit, and he he wanted to have many ventures, and he was really the technical advisor of Morpho, a venture company, until he passed away. And he was always active, and he had so many dreams, and he had many wide interests. He was interested in religion or history or so many things. So when I married to him, there are so many books, and we really had problems with the space. He probably, I don't know, you know his knowledge on the Latin or Greek. He learned such the languages to read the books in Latin, and so wide. And that was good to his research, I think. Yeah, I think well, I don't think you don't have much time, but I want to say, I want to mention his vision on when he founded the University of Aizu. His vision was to advance the knowledge for humanity, and this was his goal, and I think he was always thinking about humanity. That's the reason he was really interested in the education and mentoring people, and he was really concerned about the diversity. He was concerned about gender equality and races and so on. So he was a very warm person and kind. And after his father passed away, that was before I married him, he once wanted to become a priest. I think, he was really concerned, such humanity, and that, always his, the way of thinking, and I hope he wanted to realize that to advance knowledge for humanity in his research work. I hope his goals also inherited to the academic areas, fields. Anyway, he was very, happy in his, life. There are so many troubles, for example, to fund the University of Aizu. It was not easy, and he got sick and so on, but still, he could achieve that, and I'm really happy to see that. And today you mentioned his good points, and I really appreciate, this was really the wonderful surprise. I really appreciate you for having such an opportunity. I think, he wanted to see you, but over the COVID-19, it was very difficult to do many things. But today, I think he is watching you from the sky. Thank you very much.